This weekend we mark both a civil holiday and an important church feast. I'm speaking, of course, of Memorial Day and Pentecost. Memorial Day really looks to the past and is a pledge made not to forget. It's a time that we pray for our dead, and especially for those who died in service to our country. I recall a first grade teacher telling me how she asked her students what Memorial Day was all about. And she got lots of interesting answers, but the one that I remember is, Memorial Day is a day when we pray for dead veterinarians. Pentecost recalls the past as well, but it also speaks to the present. Let's take a look at the feast as it occurred 2,000 years ago, and then ask how this feast might challenge you and me today. 50 days after the Feast of Passover, Jews from the surrounding area would gather in Jerusalem for a Thanksgiving festival. The disciples of Jesus were gathered, but not in thanksgiving, but in fear. They huddled in an upper room, unsure about who they were and what they were to do. They probably were afraid that what happened to Jesus would happen to them, that they would be arrested and executed. What occurred at Pentecost was that the disciples became acutely aware of the presence of God in a way that had never happened to them before. We call it the presence of the Spirit, a gift that really emboldened the disciples to leave the upper room and to begin to tell others about Christ. In a sense, they morphed from cowardly creatures into brave preachers of the Word. It reminds me of an old TV commercial for a jewelry store. The husband is pictured in a giant square in Europe, and he yells out at the top of his voice, "I love this woman," and then bends down and gives her a diamond anniversary ring of some sort. And the company is hoping that you would do the same. At Pentecost, however, it's the disciples who come into the public square and say, "I love this Christ, and let me tell you what he has done for you." Sometimes the Feast of Pentecost is called the birthday of the church because it marks the beginning of a formation of a community dedicated to the teachings of Christ. The disciples were missioned or commissioned to go forth and make disciples of all the nations. Some say it's like a relay race where a baton is passed from one to the other. In this case, Christ is passing the baton from himself to his disciples who go and preach the Word. But we'd be shortchanging this Feast of Pentecost to think of it only as being in the past. It really must be seen as something that speaks to us in the here and now. Among other things, Pentecost encourages you and me to be aware of the presence of God in our lives. It's really pretty amazing when you think that God's Spirit is within us, that it encourages us, it enables us to be this preacher of the Word. In a sense, the baton is in our hands. The Spirit gives us courage and hope and strength to face the many challenges in our own lives. Think of what is challenging you today, and think of the gift of the Spirit that you have that enables you to go through it. The Spirit was not simply confined to the upper room 2,000 years ago. The Spirit is present here and now. How shall we morph?